Hi there guys, and welcome to Q-Decks. Today we're going to be going through what I believe are the top 10 most annoying cards in Cards, the Universe, and everything. There are a few other words I could use to describe the cards on this list, but we're going to keep it family friendly and stick with annoying. These are those cards you just hate seeing pop up in your opponent's hand, and they unfortunately do quite often. This list could quite easily double as the top 10 cards to screw your opponent over with, but today we're going to play the victim. So, let's get started, and first up at number 10 we have Chupacabra. On the draw, all cards in both players' hands lose 10 power until played, and 3 opponents' random cards in hand lose 25 power until play. So essentially, 2 of your cards are losing 10, and 3 are losing 35 power until played. So it can definitely start to make a dent in your score for the turn, especially if it's early on in the game. Up next, at number 9, we have Yellowjacket. On the start, your opponent's cards in hand lose 5 power until played, and on the play, your opponent's cards in hand lose 24 power this turn. I very rarely see people using this card for its start ability. It's almost always drawn and then played, so it takes a total of 29 power off all your cards in hand. So it's another one that can make a dent in your score, especially over the first round or two. On to number 8 now, we have one of the newer cards on the list, Baryonyx. On the play, your opponent's cards in hand lose 25 power this turn, and if it matches the arena, your opponent's cards lose an additional 35 power this turn. So Baryonyx edges out Yellowjacket because of that extra 35 if it's played in a paleontology arena, resulting in your cards losing a total of 180 power. Now, that can be a game changer. Also, the fact that it's become a staple in all those paleontology decks that it seems like 50% of the player base uses these days, so it shows up a lot. Next up at number 7, we have Arthropleura. Another one of those wonderful cards that's going to show up in all those paleontology decks. On the play, your opponent's cards in hand with 45 or more base power lose 30 power this turn and next. So the only downside, or upside in our case, I guess, is the power restriction. But 45, it isn't that high, and you'll find that it's going to be hitting most of your cards more often than not. Look, and on top of that, of course, it's this turn and next, so even the cards that you don't play are not safe. Over at number 6, got the first of our lock cards, Calypso. On the draw, an opponent's random card in hand locks this turn, and on the return, an opponent's random card in hand locks next turn. For anyone who loves to play their deck in a specific order, any lock card's going to be a pain. So Calypso's double the fun. Locking up a card on the draw and on the return. Coming in at number 5, we have Cockatrice. On the return, an opponent's random card in hand locks for 2 turns. Now, before this card was altered, it would have been higher on the list. It used to lock up an opponent's card for 4 turns, so putting it out of action for more than a round. But it's been reduced to 2, and although it's not quite as bad as 4 turns, if it hits the wrong card in your deck, it's definitely going to throw you out. Up next, yet another lock card, we've got Praying Mantis. On the draw, if you're trailing by 50 power or more, 2 opponents' random cards in hand lock this round. Another card that's not quite as dangerous since it's been altered, because it used to simply be losing the round rather than having to be trailing by 50 or more. But if your opponent gets the rotation correct and locks up 2 of your cards for turns 2 and 3 of a round, you'll learn to hate this card pretty quickly. Into the top 3 now, we've got the gift that keeps on giving, Grim Reaper Paradox. On the draw, if it's rounds 1 or 2, your opponent's cards in hand lose 32 power this turn. And if it's rounds 3 or 4, your opponent's cards in hand lose 16 power this turn. And if it's after round 4, your cards in hand lose 16 power permanently. If your opponent does manage to draw this on the first turn, they're going to take 32 power off your cards in the first round, 32 off your cards in the second round, another 16 off your cards in the fourth round. And look, as long as they know what they're doing, they're not going to need to worry about that negative effect on themselves in the final round. And what really just got this into the top 3 was just how commonly it's used. It just fits into a lot of decks, and it's everywhere. Down at number 2, we have everyone's favourite, Shinigami. On the play, if it's the 13th turn of a game or before, a random opponent's card in play loses 500 power this turn. And if it's after the 13th turn of a game, you lose 500 power this turn. And also on the start, you lose 4 power permanently. I'm sure a lot of people would have had this number 1. 500 power will wipe out most cards early on, and even later on in the game if they haven't had some serious buffing. So a few reasons why it just fell short. Firstly is not being able to play it on those turns 14 or 15. That's when you're likely going to be playing your biggest scoring cards. Secondly is just the randomness of the card it hits. It's just as likely to take out a card with 50 power as one with 500 power. And lastly is the newest addition to the card, which is the start ability. Losing 4 power permanently isn't the issue, but now you can see when your opponent draws Shinigami, and as long as you're paying attention, you know when they play it, so you can play your cards accordingly. This may even be the reason Q added it in, because this was very overpowered, but although with that limit, it's still a very powerful card. And on to number 1. The title of the most annoying card goes to Indigo Milkcap. On the draw, gain 25 power until this is returned to your deck, and on the return, if it's on or before round 2, turn 2, a random card in both players' hands locks permanently. And if it's after round 2, turn 2, a random card in both players' hands locks this round. This is the only card in the whole Q collection that can lock an opponent's card permanently. And unless you just happen to be playing an overlock deck yourself, there's nothing you can do about it. So it really is great watching a card you got sitting there just buffing with this massive score, and you're not even able to play it. And this is not even a scoff at the second part of the ability either. Even after round 2, turn 2, it still locks a card for the remainder of that round. So Indigo Milkcap, you suck. Anyway, that's going to do it. There are a heap of cards in Q that have a negative effect on your opponent and will be right at home on this list. For instance, I didn't include any energy increasing cards, which of course can be very annoying, but they can have little to no effect in higher energy rounds. But anyway, let me know if you agree or disagree. There were a couple such as General Sherman, Power Zero that almost made the cut, but let me know if I missed any of your favourites, or least favourites in this case. If you enjoyed the video, hit some buttons for me. Until next time, take care.